He helped to carry you along the gangway, but he came back again to the carriage. He was the driver.' 'And no one else saw the business?' 'The quay was deserted. You see, the last steamer had arrived for the night.' There was a brief silence, and then Nella ejaculated under her breath, 'Truly, it is a wonderful world.' And it was a wonderful world for them, though scarcely perhaps in the sense which Nella Racksole had intended. They had just emerged from a highly disconcerting experience. Among other minor inconveniences, they had had no breakfast. They were out in the sea in a tiny boat. Neither of them knew what the day might bring forth. The man, at least, had the most serious anxieties for the safety of his royal nephew. And yet, neither of them wished that that voyage of the little boat on the summer tide should come to an end. Each, perhaps unconsciously, had a vague desire that it might last for ever, he lazily pulling, she directing his course at intervals by a movement of her distractingly pretty head. How was this condition of affairs to be explained? Well, they were both young, they both had superb health, and all the ardour of youth, and they were together. The boat was very small indeed. Her face was scarcely a yard from his. She, in his eyes, surrounded by the glamour of beauty and vast wealth. He, in her eyes, surrounded by the glamour of masculine intrepidity and the brilliance of a throne. But all voyages come to an end, either at the shore or at the bottom of the sea, and at length the dinghy passed between the stone jetties of the harbour. The Prince rowed to the nearest steps, tied up the boat, and they landed. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, and a day of gorgeous sunlight had opened. Few people were about at that early hour. 'And now, what next?' said the Prince. 'I must take you to a hotel.' 'I am in your hands,' she acquiesced, with a smile which sent the blood racing through his veins. He perceived now that she was tired and overcome, suffering from a sudden and natural reaction. At the Hotel Wellington the Prince told the sleepy doorkeeper that they had come by the early train from Bruges, and wanted breakfast at once. It was absurdly early, but a common English sovereign will work wonders in any Belgian hotel, and in a very brief time Nella and the Prince were breakfasting on the veranda of the hotel upon chocolate that had been specially and hastily brewed for them. 'I never tasted such excellent chocolate,' claimed the Prince. The statement was wildly untrue, for the Hotel Wellington is not celebrated for its chocolate. Nevertheless, Nella replied enthusiastically, 'Nor I.' Then there was a silence, and Nella, feeling possibly that she had been too ecstatic, remarked in a very matter-of-fact tone, 'I must telegraph to Papa instantly.' Thus it was that Theodore Racksole received the telegram which drew him away from Detective Marshall. Chapter 16. The Woman with the Red Hat. 'There's one thing, Prince, that we've just got to settle straight off,' said Theodore Racksole. They were all three seated, Racksole, his daughter, and Prince Aribert, round a dinner table in a private room at the Hotel Wellington. Racksole had duly arrived by the afternoon boat, and had been met on the quay by the other two. They had dined early, and Racksole had heard the full story of the adventures by sea and land of Nella and the Prince. As to his own adventure of the previous night he said very little, merely explaining, with as little detail as possible, that Dimmock's body had come to light. 'What is that?' asked the Prince, in answer to Racksole's remark. 'We've got to settle whether we shall tell the police at once all that has occurred, or whether we shall proceed on our own responsibility. There can be no doubt as to which course we ought to pursue. Every consideration of prudence points to the advisability of taking the police into our confidence, and leaving the matter entirely in their hands.' 'Oh, Papa!' Nella burst out in her pouting, impulsive way. 'You surely can't think of such a thing. Why, the fun has only just begun.' 'Do you call last night fun?' questioned Racksole, gazing at her solemnly. 'Yes, I do,' she said promptly. 'Now.' 'Well, I don't,' was the millionaire's laconic response. But perhaps he was thinking of his own situation in the lift. 'Do you not think we might investigate a little further?' said the Prince judiciously, as he cracked a walnut. 'Just a little further, and then, if we fail to accomplish anything, there would still be ample opportunity to consult the police.' 'How do you suggest we should begin?' asked Racksole. 'Well, there is the house which Miss Racksole so intrepidly entered last evening.' He gave her the homage of an admiring glance. 'You and I, Mr Racksole, might examine that abode in detail.' 'To night?' 'Certainly. we might do something. We might do too much. For example, we might shoot someone or get ourselves mistaken for burglars. If we outstepped the law, it would be no excuse for us that we'd been acting in a good cause. True, said the Prince. Nevertheless, he stopped. Nevertheless, you have a distaste for bringing the police into the business. You want the hunt all to yourself. You are on fire with the ardor of the chase. Is not that it? Accept the advice of an older man, Prince, and sleep on this affair. I have little fancy for nocturnal escapades 2 nights together. As for you, Nella, off with you to bed. The Prince and I will have a yarn over such fluids as can be obtained in this hole. Papa, she said, you are perfectly horrid tonight. Perhaps I am, he said. Decidedly, I am very cross with you for coming over here all alone. It was monstrous. If I didn't happen to be the most foolish of parents... There, good night. It's 9 o'clock. The Prince, I'm sure, will excuse you. If Nella had not really been very tired, Prince Aribert might have been the witness of a good-natured but stubborn conflict between the millionaire and his spirited offspring. As it was, Nella departed with surprising docility, and the 2 men were left alone. Now, said Racksole suddenly, changing his tone, I fancy that after all I am your man for a little amateur investigation tonight, and, if I must speak the exact truth, I think that to sleep on this affair would be about the very worst thing we could do. But I was anxious to keep Nella out of harm's way, at any rate till tomorrow. She is a very difficult creature to manage, Prince, and I may warn you," he laughed grimly, "that if we do succeed in doing anything tonight, we shall catch it from her ladyship in the morning. Are you ready to take that risk?" "I am," the Prince smiled, "but Miss Racksole is a young lady of quite remarkable nerve." "She is," said Racksole dryly. "I wish sometimes she had less." "I have the highest admiration for Miss Racksole," said the Prince, and he looked Miss Racksole's father full in the face. "You honour us, Prince," Racksole observed. "Let us come to business. Am I right in assuming that you have a reason for keeping the police out of this business, if it can possibly be done?" "Yes," said the Prince, and his brow clouded. "I am very much afraid that my poor nephew has involved himself in some scrape that he would wish not to be divulged." "Then you do not believe that he is the victim of foul play?" "I do not." "And the reason, if I may ask it?" "Mr Racksole, we speak in confidence, is it not so? Some years ago my foolish nephew had an affair with a feminine star of the Berlin stage. For anything I know, the lady may have been the very pattern of her sex, but where a reigning prince is concerned, scandal cannot be avoided in such a matter. I had thought that the affair was quite at an end, since my nephew's betrothal to Princess Anna of Eckstein Schwarzburg is shortly to be announced. But yesterday I saw the lady to whom I have referred driving on the Digue. The coincidence of her presence here with my nephew's disappearance is too extraordinary to be disregarded." "But how does this theory square with the murder of Reginald Dimmock?" "It does not square with it. My idea is that the murder of poor Dimmock and the disappearance of my nephew are entirely unconnected. Unless, indeed, this Berlin actress is playing into the hands of the murderers. I had not thought of that." "Then what do you propose to do tonight?" "I propose to enter the house which Miss Racksole entered last night, and to find out something definite." "I concur," said Racksole. "I shall heartily enjoy it. But let me tell you, Prince, and pardon me for speaking bluntly, your surmise is incorrect. I would wager £100,000 that Prince Eugen has been kidnapped." "What grounds have you for being so sure?" "Ah," said Racksole, "that's a long story. Let me begin by asking you this. Are you aware that your nephew, Prince Eugen, owes £1 million of money?" "£1 million of money!" cried Prince Aribert astonished. "It is impossible." "Nevertheless he does," said Racksole calmly. Then he told him all he had learned from Mr Sampson Levi. "What have you to say to that?" Racksole ended. Prince Aribert made no reply. "What have you to say to that?" Racksole insisted. "Merely that Eugen is ruined, even if he is alive." "Not at all," Racksole returned with cheerfulness. "Not at all. We shall see about that. The special thing that I want to know just now from you is this. Has any previous application ever been made for the hand of the Princess Anna?" "Yes, last year. The king